Given that that fertilisers and plant nutrition inputs are probably the biggest variable input cost for the average farmer, how well do you think we're actually using it?
Not very well is probably the short answer. I think we've got a long way to, we've got plenty of scope to improve. Our surveys of farmers and advisors who are advising the farmers is that they think there's a massive area still to improve, even though we think that we've probably made gains in recent years.
Which is somewhat surprising given we've had 35 to 40 years of soil testing, a bit less on plant testing and a lot of trial work to back that up in the development of models and since the implementation of that.
Yeah, I think on the soil test, if you look at what's happening with soil testing today, good farmers are probably sampling a third to a quarter of their farm, and that's the better farmers, and they're getting recommendations for say a quarter of their farm, and somehow they have to extrapolate that across the other 3/4 of their farm. We know that they've got soil tests from that other 3/4 that are sitting in cupboards and they don't even look at them, and that's information that could be brought to the table every year to make better decisions across the whole farm.
So at the moment there's a bit of a black hole of information to develop that historical background and use pattern to try and put the whole picture together.
Yeah, we've got soil test data sitting in filing cabinets that we could be using right now to make better fertiliser recommendations for this season. Plus we have growers who, with recording of GPS coordinates, have been going back to the same sites for 15 to 20 years, who are actually quite interested in having a look at the trends in things over that period to see what effect their management has had. And in most cases that information again is being ignored.
So how do where they do test 30% of their farm, it seems strange that we test in December to apply fertiliser in April, May, June. How relevant is the testing to that immediate post or the year following?
For most of the decisions that we're making now in summer, autumn, that's fine. Things like phosphorus and potassium, probably to a lesser extent than phosphorus and pH. Those sorts of things don't alter a hell of a lot over the summer, autumn period. There's probably nitrogen is the one that alters, depending upon whether it rains, and nitrogen in our environment is a bit of an iffy thing. So if we get some information on nitrogen now, it's probably better than nothing, and if we're a bit smart leading into seeding and after seeding, we can adjust our nitrogen rates accordingly as well.
There's been a big push recently, once again in liming. Liming's been around for 20 years or more, but there's been a big push recently, and it seems people have finally woken up to the importance. Has that come at the expense of other nutrition inputs?
I think what we're seeing now is that perhaps it is at the expense of other inputs, whether that's nutrition inputs or other inputs full stop, I'm not sure. But I think what is happening is people are cottoning on to trying to identify what is the most limiting factor and what input they're likely to get the best rate of return on, and directing money to that, as opposed to spreading it thinly and widely like has probably happened before. And I think we're probably a bit more aware of the acidity problem than we were before.
And the other one that gets a lot of airtime at the moment is variable rate technology. Where does that fit in the future, do you think?
Oh look, a variable rate is the way of the future. Whether we're ready to run with it holus bolus now, I'm not too sure. What we find is that a lot of people are interested in varying rates within a paddock because they have the technology to do that and they have the tools to do that. And when we actually step back and have a look at the whole farm, we can actually see that there's a lot more low-hanging fruit across the whole farm, and we're talking quite large percentage improvements across the whole farm as opposed to going to very small improvements, varying rates within paddocks.